Good morning. This is the Blaine's World webcast that can be found each week on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also listen in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and get more information about um, this show and past and previous shows at my website, which is behind me, blainesworld.net. I'm your host, Blaine Greenfield, and I'm here at my Zoom studio in lovely Fairview, North Carolina. Each week, we focus on positive news and information about people and organizations in both Western North Carolina and throughout the country. And toward that end, it's my pleasure to introduce La Bourgeois, and I have it correct. Is that pronunciation correct?
Yes,
Who's
indeed.
an author and creativity coach for being my guest today. Before we go any further, La, you can wave to all your fans and friends who are watching this.
Hi.
That's okay, that's La Bourgeois. La Bourgeois, I knew when she used to be in the area, but she's now living in Ithaca, New York, after moving from Weeville. She's a freelance writer and creativity coach and recently finished training to become an end-of-life doula. In 2024, she published her humorous essay collection. I think you can see it behind us. It's a Diary of a Lesbian Housewife, with plans to write two more books in this series: Lesbian Housewife, Bigger, Broader, and More Delightful, and Lesbian Housewife, Surviving Resilience. So I have to ask you a lot in terms of, I know you a little bit through your work in Wayville, and just been so impressed that you do about 27 other things in your spare time. As a child, you grew up where?
As a child, I grew up in Arkansas.
As a child growing up in Arkansas, did you always know you wanted to be, I guess, a woman of many talents? But I guess we'll first of all talk about a writer. Did you want to always know you want to be a writer?
Yes, I did. I did. I started reading when I was very, very young. I don't actually remember a time when I couldn't read. And when I realized that writer, like I could be one of the people who wrote the stories that I loved, I fell in love with the idea of being a writer and started putting pen to paper and haven't stopped.
You remember the first thing you ever wrote that was published?
The first thing I ever wrote that was published was a piece that I wrote in college, actually. I wrote an essay in college for a college course, and it won a contest um, in the freshman class, and so it got published as part of a collection of essays that they put out at the University of Denver in 1989.
Okay, very cool. Do you remember the first time? So I guess not for that one, but do you remember the first time you ever got paid to write something?
That they paid me.
Oh,
They
I was
paid me
right.
like I think it was I got a check for maybe $20 or
It
something.
doesn't matter, but that was how cool is that? You're a freshman in college, and you get and like I said, just that you got paid for it. That was really exciting.
It
But
was.
I guess so. From that point in time, so you were writing in high school, college, whatever. You just continued writing like crazy.
I continued writing like crazy. I really loved it. And that was actually right after I graduated from college. I guess a couple of years after I graduated from college, I started writing the essays that are included in Diary of a Lesbian Housewife. And that I went in and out of writing for a while. My degree was in English, but it focused on theater. So I somehow I had in my brain that it would be easier to be like an actress instead of a writer. Which
So one time you wanted to be an actor.
at one time I wanted to be an actor. Yeah, my degree is actually it's English with an emphasis in theater.
So did you act also?
I did act. I acted and directed and did stage management and all the behind the scenes stuff.
Very cool. But so you're not doing that anymore?
I'm not. I really stopped doing that after I finished college. But I do carry those talents for collaboration and figuring out projects and being able to enact them. It's given me my theater background really helped me to become a more um, what's the word I'm trying to think of? I guess just it gave me really the tools that I needed to create and run businesses and work in the world.
Well, it's funny because that's how I guess I met you initially, and we'll talk a little bit about the job you did. But boy, did you do a job? Give me the exact title of the organization, Wayville. What was it?
It was the Weaverville Center for Creative and Healthy Living, And
Okay.
now it's the Weaverville Community Center, I believe. Now that the town's taken it back over, but that was a nonprofit organization that was put together by Tom Balistrieri, who is a fabulous dude, who's still in Weaverville, but stepped back from the organization. And he brought me in to do their newsletter and social media management.
And I just, you kind of blew me away with what you're doing because I think that's how we first met. That boy, were you cranking a lot of stuff and good stuff. You know what I'm saying? It was that, social media is important, but a lot of people don't use it or don't use it very well. But you were like religious with, putting out newsletter, putting out Facebook posts, other stuff. And it
Yep.
really, I think, helped get the word out about that center, you know.
Yeah, it was great. And I was really so pleased that Thomas Calder over at Mountain
Oh, I
Express,
know, sure.
yeah, he brought me on to be a journalist with Mountain Express for a couple of years before I left Weaverville to move to Ithaca. And he did some great, and continues to do great stuff with promoting those. And I was able to use that connection with him to really lift the visibility of the community center and all of those fabulous. I mean, I used to love the storytelling concerts. Chuck Fink did such a great job with that, and Jill Topman. Oh, they did wonderful stuff. And Chuck, I did a storytelling class with Chuck. It was
I
so much
remember
fun.
you not only took the course, I didn't get to see it, but you actually then performed in the storytelling class.
Yes,
Yeah. Did you like that?
I did. I did. I really enjoyed it. It was a fun time.
Well, I have to give you a compliment because you did something which is so cool just now, is that, a lot of people are kidded that why were they a theater major, and you did such a great job saying that, well, you can be a theater major, but you can do other things, and I
Yeah.
think you show it.
Absolutely. It gives you a lot of tools to go further on in life. And people discount the arts, I think, a lot because they think that it's not something that's going to be able to translate into a life where you make money because of starving artists and things like that. But yeah, they all of these artistic um, education, all the artistic education, like theater just give you all the tools that you need to be a really well-rounded person in the world and do things like collaborate and figure out how to make things go and promote stuff.
And one of the things I love that you and Tom did at Center is you brought in like so many different kinds of arts, I mean, you brought in, well, you did a lot of theater programs I've attended. You brought in the storytelling. I mean, it was always pretty exciting, and they're still doing it, that you made this center more than just a typical center. It's so cool that you did that. So you did that for a bunch of years to our loss or the area's loss. What got you to Ithaca?
So what ended up happening was I was trying to, there were a lot of things that happened. But basically, I ended up needing to leave the area. And so we sold our house. And I decided what we'll do is we'll just sell our house and we'll hit the road and see if we can find a place to live, right? And we never really explored the Northeast as a place that we could find a home. So we said, okay, we're doing it. So we called ourselves Old Wilding Lesbians and we hit the road. And my sister-in-law had visited Ithaca. She was living in Vermont at the time. She visited Ithaca and she said, this is the place to be. We got to do this. And so we found a house and rented a house together with an old friend of theirs from grade school. They'd reconnected with this guy who was a family friend of theirs from grade school. And so we all four got a house together and moved to Ithaca. We thought we'd be exploring and seeing other places to live. And so far, we moved to Ithaca and just stayed. It's been a really lovely place to be.
Well, in some respects, Ithaca reminds me, I guess, a little of Asheville in that
Hmm.
one, there's so much to do, but more importantly, so much to do with respect to the arts and creativity. It seems I mean, just given your background, it seems like almost a perfect location for you other than Asheville, or Weaveville.
Yeah, absolutely. There's it's amazing. There is art, there is creativity, there's theater, there's the colleges. So Cornell is here, and then also Ithaca College, and they are constantly having performances and interesting talks. There are several bookstores in town. I do love it. I really enjoy Ithaca.
So,
And I get to have winter again. I came from Steamboat Springs to Asheville.
okay.
And so when we came up to Ithaca, I was like, oh, look, it's really snowy for a while.
Well, just the opposite. So one of the reasons we came to Asheville from New Jersey, Pennsylvania area is that we thought it was like the perfect weather, because I don't love snow, I don't love ice, and I used to tell Asheville is the perfect place. Mild winters, mild summers, no snow, perfect weather until the hurricane is. So you got out before then, which was,
Yes.
I guess, good. But now, so you're winding up in Ithaca. But it's kind of an adventurous move on your part. So you had nothing planned at that point in time when you moved to Ithaca. Did you have anything on your agenda what you'd be doing?
So I was going deep into my writer phase. So I was really trying to
Okay.
expand my freelance writing and my creativity coaching. Um, and Yeah, I mean, I've done that. One of the things that I've been able to do is to take some time and really put it into writing, and compiling more books. And getting ready this year, I'm going to be releasing two new books. One is called Lesbian Housewife, Bigger, Broader, and More Delightful. And that book is actually, it's available now from paid subscribers to my Diary of a Lesbian Housewife Substack. But then I'm also writing a piece that really goes through that last 18 months worth of time that I spent in the Asheville area. And I'm calling it The Lesbian Housewife's Guide to Surviving Resilience. And so that covers a whole time when life was bad, but I survived.
I want people, if anybody's listening to this, and I hope they are, I want them to pay attention to an idea while you're sharing with folks as to what they could be doing because a lot of people always used to say I want to write a book or I want to do this, but if you can, because I just thought it's so brilliant what you've done and it works for you, talk about your process as to writing. For example, I should ask you even before the process, do you get up like every morning at 7 o'clock in the morning and write for 2 hours straight, or what's your writing process?
So basically, I mean, that's pretty close to it. I get up in the morning and I have my little yoga time.
Right.
And then I sit down at the computer and I start off by writing just kind of everything that's going through my head, which is a process that called morning pages that Julia Cameron
Right.
talks about in her create the artist way. But so I start with that and then go into whatever other writing I need to do that day. I could be writing a piece so once a week, at least once a week, I write a piece for my Diary of a Lesbian Housewife Substack. But then I also have other pieces that I need to write for different people who have either commissioned them or I've asked them to commission them. Um, but I write other pieces as well. And I spend at least until around 11 doing that. So probably a good 2 to 3 hours each morning. I just devote to writing.
And a lot, if you would, for the benefit of the folks who are not familiar with Substacks, and I'm just starting to get
Mhm.
familiar with them, what
Sure.
exactly is it?
So Substack it's a website, it's a platform that is it's like a combination of a newsletter platform and a blog. So what happens is if you go to substack.com, it will ask you to sign up and you can sign up and then you can find all sorts of different newsletters and blog posts, writing. Really, it's very, very geared towards writers. And if you like to read long form writing, if you like to read funny writing, if you like to read serious writing, all sorts of people are on there writing. And you can find some amazing work on Substack, but it's substack.com. And what happens is when you sign up for a newsletter there, or when you subscribe to one of the people, they when they hit post on their posts, it comes to you in the email. And you can click through and read it on your browser, or you can just read it in your email. Another fun part of the Substack community is their notes. So you can go on and the notes are they're kind of like Facebook. So you go in and people are all talking to each other and they're commenting on different things, and commenting on different posts that they make. But they also say, "Oh, I've posted this day here." And I really like the Substack community. It feels warm, it feels supportive, and it is filled with people who love to read.
So how many people on your Substack? So your Substack, what's the name of it?
Mine is called Diary of a Lesbian Housewife, and people can find it directly by going to lesbianhousewife.substack.com. And that's housewife with a Y. So it's lesbian, HOUSEWYFE
By the
dot
way,
substack.com.
I have to ask you that. Is there a reason for that?
The reason behind that is, so I came up with this in the late 90s. And at that point, marriage equality was not a thing. And so, but I knew a lot of people who at that time were doing commitment ceremonies and living together really as married people. They just couldn't legally get
Sure.
married. And so I said, well, there needs to be another name besides partner. Partner felt
Right.
very sterile.
Exactly.
And so I said, no, what we should do
Oh,
is we should have husband and wife, and it should be husband with a Y, so HUSBYND, and then wife, WYFE. And then it's the same word that we're using for husbands and wives. It's just spelled a little differently because,
I love it.
okay,
What, how, I missed it. So how was husband spelled?
HUSBYND.
I love it. Wow. But accepting, I guess the only thing that was missing. So did you have a name for the couple, or so they weren't partners, they weren't married at the time? What were they?
So a lot of times I mean, they were living like they were
Right,
married.
right.
Right. But I didn't have a specific like other word besides marriage. I hadn't gone that far.
Well,
I just,
I love it. So you were ahead of the time game, certainly, you know.
yes.
But brilliant. Now I understand. So thank you for explaining it. So
Sure.
let's go from there, if you would. So the Substack, you want to follow um, La Bourgeois, look at the Substack under the lesbian housewife is the
Yep.
overall. Okay.
Lesbianhousewife.substack.com.
And if you just look up your name, will they find you there as well?
They will. They will. And
Okay.
they can also go to housewife.com. So HOUSEWYFE.com. And that is my main website, my direct website.
I want people, if they're listening, to get this one idea from law, which is just incredible, that if you want to write, one, this is a great way to get into writing. Two, it's a great way to put your books together, just taking then your entries there. And definitely worth checking into. So let's talk a little bit about then some of the other stuff you do in your spare time, I'll say, in your spare time. So one of the things you're almost doing for people watching this webcast is so you're also we'll call it a creativity coach. And how do you get into that, and what does that entail?
So, creativity coaching showed up in my life. I read a book by a guy named Eric Maisel, and he is kind of the granddaddy of creativity coaches. His latest book is called Choose Your Life Purposes, and he's written a ton, just a ton. Super smart guy, amazing teacher, amazing coach. But basically, what a creativity coach does is they help people to find creative solutions to problems, to overcome obstacles. They can help you. For example, a big thing that I do is disarming overwhelm, helping you to be able to step back and look at your process, to think differently about what you're doing. And I've worked with people, a lot of people say, oh, you're a creativity coach. Well, I'm not doing anything creative.
Right.
And I've worked with people who are doing incredibly creative things. I've worked with people who are doing things like, well, who just don't even know. They know they want to be creative, but they don't know what they want to do. And I helped a woman who actually ended up creating a, a jewelry line from not knowing what she wanted to do at all. And now she runs a jewelry store. Well, it was in the Grove Arcade. I'm not sure if it's there anymore. And I'm trying to think of the name of the store. Shoot. But her name's Katie Simonetti. Anyway, and she's a fabulous person, and a wonderful, wonderful artist. But I've also helped people do things like start a business and go ahead and I helped one woman with relationship work. Like she just gotten divorced and she wanted to start dating again, and she came to me.
One of the things, again, I'm also liking about what you're saying, it reminds me, I'll just tell real quickly the story of what happens to too many of us, and we're told we can't be creative, you know? And
Hmm.
remember, I'm smiling, but there are two instances, but the one I remember right away is when I was a little kid, I loved to draw and paint, as a kid. And I remember my mother, one time, I think we had like 5 refrigerators, put up everything, all my artwork, right? And then I get to, well, true story, I get to like second grade, and an art teacher for the first time, I think she laughed at something I drew. I think I stopped drawing and painting. That was it. But isn't that true? And that's where you come in play as a creativity coach. Isn't that true that too often we're told in our life we can't do something or we have no talent? And boy, is that a way to end it all. But do you see that happening?
Absolutely. I see people who have this problem and they'll come to me, or they just won't even want to talk to me because they're like, oh no, I'm not creative. And I just look at them and I go, you put together your outfit. You were thinking when you put on your clothes. You're creative in so many ways that you just don't really know about. There is this, and you're the only one who can do it, you know? There are so many people who think that they're not creative and they put together their outfits every day. They decorate their homes. They garden and create beautiful gardens. They create wonderful meals. They do all of these things that are so creative and they just don't realize it. And a lot of times it is because of this one person who was in authority and said no. You
And
know,
what's sad or worse is when it's a parent or a spouse or significant other,
hmm.
that can you imagine? And parents do that, not intentionally, I
Absolutely.
guess, but it happens. So
Hmm.
this, I mean, speaking to you live, just kind of blown away in that I didn't know all these different aspects of your life. So we talked a little before about the writing aspect. Now we'll talk about the creativity aspect. If somebody wanted to get in touch with you, just to, like we're talking, bounce off ideas or work with you in terms of you helping them be more creative, what would be the best way in that to reach you?
Probably just to email me, which
Okay.
is just to email me at law@housewife.com. So LA at HOUSEWYFE.com.
Okay, but housewife has spelled correctly though, right?
And housewife has to be spelled correctly.
Okay. And so, and by the way, you mentioned, I don't think I asked for it. You also have a website?
I do. I have a website of housewife.com. The my creativity coaching, I do have a website for my creativity coaching, which is labourgeois.biz, but that's a little harder to spell. So we'll
Sure.
just stick with housewife.com.
But at housewife.com, we can find out how to reach you and about your creativity coaching.
Yes.
Okay. And I have to ask you, just talk in the remaining time about one other thing you do, and just blew me away. So you and I have been in touch in person a couple times, Facebook, social media, but then I saw just recently, and I said I had to ask you about this as well. You all of a sudden now became and you're certified, right, as an end of life doula?
So there's no official real
Okay.
certification for the end of life doula. It's something that you just kind of decide that you want to do, and then I went through a training with an
That's
organization
what I
called
saw.
the International End of Life Doula Association. And so I am qualified and trained to be an end of life doula. And I was a hospice volunteer many years ago, which is how I got kind of interested in working with people who were at end of life, and in that end of life process.
And so let me ask you again, for the benefit of the folks who don't know what it is, they
Sure.
kind of know what an end of life is, even though you don't
Right.
think about it too much. But
Mhm.
what is a end of life doula then? And what's the doula part of it?
So the end of life doula advocates for the dying person in whatever space that they're in. So they may be in hospice, they may be at home in hospice, they may be just in a process where they're confronting their mortality. That can be a space where an end of life doula shows up. One of the pieces of being an end of life doula that I am most intrigued by is the idea of creating legacy projects and remembrance projects, which are maybe artistic projects that you want to do within before you die, or that help you to create a space that you would like to die within, if that makes sense.
It makes sense also because it ties into everything else we've been talking about. Because
Hmm.
boy, does creativity come into play, and you kind of alluded to it, but you did it better than I'm going to do it. But to show people that even dying or end of life, they can be creative, even as do so as they are. And give an example of that. Or what would you say, for example, if somebody comes to you, and it's so sad because I'm thinking of my dad. And I always wanted him to share his stories, but he never shared his stories. And so
Sure.
many people are in that context. How do you tell a person, and again, they come to you about, they didn't even think about legacy, but lovely thing to think about, but I can't write or I've never done this before. What do you tell them?
So there are a lot of things that you can do. One thing is that when we think about telling stories, we often think about writing something with
Right.
words and publishing it. And that's definitely a way that you can do it. But let's say that your talent lies in another area. You are a painter. Well, maybe you want to tell your stories through your paintings. Maybe, and you want to create one painting that is a beautiful representation of you and yourself and what you want to move forward with. Perhaps you like to do collage. Maybe you're a scrapbooker, and or maybe you are a chef and you want to write down all your recipes. There's a lot of different a lot of different spaces that people can do. I saw during our training, there was a video that we watched of a woman who had created an entire um, theatrical experience.
Oh, very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. And got all of her friends to do it. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing and very joyous. That's another thing that, dying and being in the dying process is very sad. I mean, you can't sugarcoat that. This is
Right.
not a great time in your life, right? But it doesn't have to be so heavy all the time. It can be a joyous thing. You can celebrate your life before it ends in any way that you want.
Well, you kind of alluded to it when you were talking about the Weaville Center, but it could also be another way if somebody says they don't like to write or don't want to write, they could also tell stories, and then I guess you could tell a story and then have somebody else take it down or record it as a way to share their legacy. But I just love
Absolutely.
that for people. So one thing you work with them is to get them to think about the legacy or what they want it to be, and then
Hmm.
I love it to express it. I have to
Yeah.
ask you before I let you go, if you get behind you, I see you have the book, and
Yes,
if you just show it, I'm loving the cover. Was that, did you do the artwork?
I did.
I
I did.
love
It's
it.
a paper cut
Uh,
and a yeah. So I did this back in the 90s and it was fully just like construction paper and little pictures from greeting cards that I'd gotten.
But so much love that. So there's a way that you can display your artistic creativity. But I just love the cover. La Bourgeois, we're going to obviously have to have you on again. This is the second time you've been on my show. If folks want to reach you again, what are the best ways?
So the best way to reach me is to email me, and that's at LA at housewife, HOUSEWYFE.com. That's going to be the best way to reach me, I think.
Okay. Now, just encourage folks if they want to bounce off ideas of somebody who is obviously very creative, but boy, we've gone through a lot today. We can talk about your writing. You can talk about your some of the other stuff you do. You're the person to contact. So I'd like to thank you for being my guest on this edition of Blaine's World website. And next time I'm in Ithaca, which I don't think will be in the near future, or do you ever come back to this area?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do. So
Okay.
if I ever come back in, I'll let you know.
Okay, please do. Hopefully we'll bump into each other again. And thanks again for being my guest. I also like to thank my producer, Cap Dissetti. And you be well. And like I said, hopefully we'll bump into each other again a lot. This was great. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you.